Do you feel like you're barely keeping your head above water? That no matter how hard you try, meaningful progress remains out of reach? Heather gets that. She battled an eating disorder for years before seeking help. Now in recovery, Heather is here to tell you that positive change is possible even when it doesn't feel that way. Join her as she shares openly about her struggles and small triumphs. Fair warning though, Heather doesn't hold back. Her candid story may trigger some. But for those wanting honesty, hope, and healing, this is 1% Better with Heather. The information and stories shared on 1% Better are based on host Heather's personal experiences with eating disorders and mental health challenges. Heather is not a licensed doctor, therapist, dietitian, or other health professional. Her advice and opinions should not be taken as professional medical advice. Please consult your physician or a qualified health provider regarding any medical or health-related issues. 1% Better also contains descriptions of eating disorders that may be triggering for some listeners. Discretion is advised.
Hey there, my little gaffers, and welcome to 1% Better with Heather. Today I have a special guest, Edie Warrior Mom, as she's known on TikTok. For the next couple episodes, Edie Warrior Mom will share how she got pulled into this eating disorder hell. No questions off limits. She will speak about her daughter and their experience with the eating disorder recovery system, how this disease affected her family. She will also be discussing her faith in a higher power and how that helped her get through this eating disorder hell. It takes a brave person to come onto a worldwide podcast and air your dirty laundry, so to speak. I applaud her for this. Now, without any further ado, here is Edie Warrior Mom. Hey there, my little gaffers, and welcome to 1% Better with Heather. I am here with Edie Warrior Mom, as she's affectionately called on TikTok, and we are talking everything about her life and how she got wrapped up into this eating disorder recovery hell. Welcome, Edie Warrior Mom.
Hi, Heather. Thank you for having me.
So before we start, tell everybody how they can find you on your social medias.
All right. So on TikTok, I am Edie Warrior Mom is the label, but the actual handle is wendy.with.a.k. And if that sounds really weird, it's because my name is Kendy, and all my life people have never been able to figure that one out. So I just introduced myself as it's like Wendy with a K. So that's how that came about.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So let's talk how all of this has affected, well, it's a Chernobyl effect, right? No one comes out unscathed. It's clearly dominoes. So do you want to, if you're comfortable enough, share how this has affected you, your family, relationships?
Yeah, I think it has affected us in every way possible. There's definitely in our minds sort of the divide in life from before eating disorder and after eating disorder. And, I was telling somebody the other day that it's a weird dynamic for me because I will, like, pictures of our family will come up on Facebook from 6 or 7 years ago. And I look at those pictures and I don't recognize the people. Like I love them, but I also hate them a little bit because they were so naive about what was coming. And it's really hard for me to see those old pictures and feel connected to them because of kind of what we've been through. And I hate that that is our reality, but it is. And maybe that will lessen over time. I hope that it does. But today, that's kind of how it feels. But what I've learned is that it's really difficult for this illness not to take over almost everything about how a family functions. Like everything we talk about, we have, a different way now of how we deal with meals, how we talk about food, how we talk about our bodies. We have this collective feeling of walking on eggshells around, the issue. And so it does feel like we're just in this bubble of eating disorder stuff. And everything's just under a microscope when you go through something like this, and it's hard, and everything is magnified from your existing relationships with each other. If they're struggling, they're going to struggle more. I guarantee it. And how just emotionally we as individuals deal with hardship, how we feel about mental health challenges or our own experiences with mental health, and what we kind of learn about the disorder itself. All of that is just kind of enmeshed in this really strange way. So I'll start with my husband and myself. And it's been tremendously hard for us. And I'm just being brutally honest that you don't necessarily know that you're not on the same page or that you have different parenting styles until something like this happens. And then you're like, oh crap, I think I'm right. You think you're right. And how are we going to kind of reconcile this? And so we've really had to try to prioritize us, because it's really easy to get stuck in, her needs are the only needs that matter because they're the most critical right now. And be really just open and honest in our communication with each other. So some days I feel like we do great and I'm like, we got this. And other days, not so much. So that's an ongoing learning process, I think, for all of us. For, my boys, we talked a little bit before just about kind of what they knew and how they responded to her going to treatment. I think I've just been really hyper aware of any indication that they feel like they're being neglected or their needs aren't being met in any specific way. So I try to just be really present with them, do things individually with them. I mentioned being away from my family when Bailey was in the partial hospitalization program 3 hours away. I moved there and stayed there with her for about 6 weeks, and then another few weeks the second time she went to treatment. So collectively over a year, I didn't live with my family for, a few months. And I know that that was really, really difficult on everybody. And we managed. And I also will say it takes a village. And I'm so thankful for our mothers, my mother and my husband's mother, who really stepped in and helped and supported the boys and my husband and any need that we had during that time. So that's just another kind of dynamic at play. And then I think for me, and that's where things get rough in my own brain because it's me. I've had a really difficult time through this journey. And the reason is that I initially felt such a burden of responsibility to fix this. And you know it, Heather. Everybody else around me knows it. But it took me a really long time to get to the place where I understood that I can't fix it. I can love her, I can support her, I can try to create some accountability, but I can't fix it. And this gave me such a profound sense of failure as a mother, to be honest, just being very transparent. And, I joked when my kids were little, you'd be at a play date with a bunch of other moms and you'd be talking about how we're not good at this or we're not good at that. And, I remember saying, we're all going to screw our kids up some way, but the only really important thing is that we keep them alive. And then here I was, all these years later, faced with this very real and present possibility that my kid might die from this. And I couldn't keep that from happening. So my personal journey has been one of learning, and I'm still learning because I mentioned earlier I'm not a great student, to let go of that anxiety, to learning to parent her where she is, and how to keep myself healthy and focused on the right things so that I can stay in the fight with her today and not worry about tomorrow. And that's been very, very difficult, but I've been mindful and I have turned toward the things that I know to be true in life to carry me through. And that is my faith in God as the foundation for my life.
So before we dive into that, let's go back a bit. What I love what you said was you and your husband making time for yourself. And I know how I can see the emotion in you. How that's so important, and I just want parents to understand this because they're like you push out this baby and you get this abundant love that you've never experienced before, and your job is you'll jump in front of a train for that kid, right? And no one will experience that unless you have a child, right? And or adopt, whatever. But the eating disorder is so sneaky and slick and likes to put guilt. I'm not trying to put words in your daughter's mouth or whatever. I know what I've said to my family, and it's not something to be proud of. But for you two to hold tight and go against this disease, but still put yourself there, because Slick is very manipulative. I can't say the word. Like, he wants to pit people against each other, right? And I know a lot of parents who just stop their lives and all they're doing is watching their kid 24/7. Their marriage is crumbling at the end of the day, right? If you don't have your partner, you only got 50% of the team.
That's absolutely right. Absolutely. And I think that, we at one point had to have a conversation about that very thing. Like, I know it's difficult. I know it feels like if I don't do this, that, or the other, that there's going to be grave consequences. But we also have to make ourselves a priority, right? Like she can manage to be by herself tonight so that we can go out and, have a few beers and talk about something other than what happened today or yesterday. And I would say I can say all the right things about that, and I know all the right things about that. We've not always done it well, and that's one of my biggest, I don't like to use the word regrets, but if I were to do it over again, I would be more mindful of my own anxiety taking away from things that matter just as much as what was going on at any given time. So my advice is just know that going in, right? Like, it's going to happen. The divide and conquer, the triangulation, the different parenting styles and expectations, and you have to make it work together.
Yeah, and even when you're saying, and I don't want to upset you, I don't want to make you, I don't want to hit a nerve or anything, but our job as mothers, parents, keep this kid breathing. It's very difficult. Now, I've come from, I don't know if, well, probably no one knows, my stepdaughter had leukemia when she was 3. She's fine. She's 26 now, 25. It's a happy story. And my son was born with a echo on his heart and a multicystic kidney. So he had one kidney in goop. So both my husband and I spent time in Children's Hospital. And it's you're helpless. You're helpless. But when you flip it with an eating disorder, we're not looking to doctors that are saying to us, oh, this might work, take this drug. We don't know how long you're going to be here. Have to go find, the holy grail of medicine. When we have a child with an eating disorder, literally your medicine is in the freaking cabinet. And that's so the helplessness right there.
Yeah, I think that's a good characterization of the whole challenge, is just feeling helpless and not knowing exactly what to do. So you do a whole lot of running around like a chicken with your head cut off. And that takes away from a lot in your life. And that anxiety really is just a byproduct of being in this fight.
Yeah, and I totally commend you for you and your husband coming together, because my husband and I have talked about it, and he's seen it more than me because my son's situation wasn't as dire. But he said I saw marriages crumble right in front of me in Children's Hospital. Like it is. It just dominoes. You can't take it, right?
Well, and you also sort of, I think at the end of the day, are so exhausted that you're not taking care of yourself. So you can't take care of anybody else. And if you are, you're taking care of the person that's, you know, most vulnerable. And then you have needs from other people in your life and you just can't do it. I mean, even just not talking about a couple relationship, but even at work, I never realized before this happened to us that I could function over here. I could sit in meetings, I could write things, I could talk to people, whatever. But over here, just this constant dialogue in my head about everything else. And this is what I was paying attention to, not this. It's like almost having an out of body experience all the time. And that just, it takes its toll. And it probably is because of my makeup that I've done that so much, maybe even more than my husband, or maybe I just talk about it more than he does. But, I felt like very much a slave to everything that was happening in the moment, and nothing else was really, I wasn't functioning well in any other part of life.
And if you don't mind sharing, what does that look like for you? Do you have to now go to therapy? Because you probably need it. No offense or anything, right? Like, how does your mental health now, come into play?
It's a great question. And I probably, again, I've mentioned a couple times, I'm not a great student. I have spent a lot of time journaling. I do talk to people in my life. I have, a few very close people who know everything that's happened and have been present for me to process out loud a lot of things that I am experiencing and feeling. I talk to my husband pretty frequently about things, but I probably do need, I've made everybody else in my life the therapist versus actually going to see someone. But I do, we are going to talk about faith. I do think that has been really my number one thing that has helped me keep everything in perspective, pull myself off the ledge, and keep myself in a place that I can do what everybody else in life needs me to do. And that's, I think one of the biggest blessings out of this experience. I wouldn't have chosen it, but learning a lot about who I am and who God is really a story to tell in and of itself.
Well, my friend, I appreciate you being so open and honest and opening your heart to everybody. The effect this will have, like, I love this episode already. I love it. I think this is, you can't buy this information anywhere. And I really hope people listen and take this and take your advice, because this is it right here. This is gold.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you so much. And one more time, where do we find you on social media?
On TikTok, I am Edie Warrior Mom is the label, but the actual handle is Wendy with a K, but it has dots in the middle of it. So Wendy.with.a.k. Sorry, I made it really difficult.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, thank you again so much. Thank you for joining us.
That's all for this episode of 1% Better. To continue the conversation, head over to our website at www.1percentbetter.ca, where you can access more stories and resources. We'd also love it if you subscribed and left us a review on your favorite podcast platform. And remember, friends, progress takes patience, perspective, and sometimes a little help from people who get it. So be kind to yourself and others as we work to get 1% better every day. We'll see you back here next week.